The sun was slowly sinking behind the wide fields, painting the sky with warm orange and pink shades, when Cole Hartley guided his horse toward the small rural marketplace. It had been a long week, filled with hard work, long rides, and quiet evenings. Cole had come only to buy a few basic supplies. He wasn't in the mood for conversation, and he wasn't planning to stay longer than necessary. The dust under his boots rose with each step, and the faint sounds of people chatting mixed with the clinking of tools, the smell of hay, and the soft movement of animals resting in the shade. Cole looked like any other cowboy, but inside he lived a life far quieter than most. He preferred silence. He preferred distance. His hat covered most of his face, and the light beard around his jaw made him look older than he was. His brown eyes carried a tired calmness, and the rifle slung casually over his shoulder showed he was used to responsibilities. Nothing about him suggested that his day would change in the next few minutes. He walked past the first row of stalls, nodding politely toward familiar vendors. Some greeted him, some simply waved. Cole was not rude. He just didn't talk unless needed. He bought rope, a small bag of nails, and some dried food. He planned to buy 2 more items and leave before the market became crowded. But as he walked toward the far side of the marketplace, something unexpected happened. He heard a sound, not a cry, not a shout, but a soft, gentle noise. It felt almost like a whisper carried by the breeze. Cole wasn't sure why it caught his attention, but his feet slowed down as if someone had put a hand on his shoulder. His ears focused on that sound. It came from behind a small wooden stall, where a group of animals were tied quietly. He turned his head in that direction. There, standing under the shade of an old canvas sheet, was a chestnut mare. Her coat shined even in the dim light. Her eyes were deep, calm, and strangely expressive. When Cole looked at her, she lifted her head slightly and made the same soft sound again. It wasn't a normal neigh. It was something peaceful. Something that felt like a call only he could hear. Cole stopped walking. His breath stilled for half a second as he locked eyes with the mare. It was unusual for him to feel such a sudden connection. He had seen many horses in his life, strong ones, fast ones, stubborn ones, but none of them had made him pause like this. The mare slowly walked closer to the edge of her stall. Her ears twitched, and her eyes softened. There was something warm in her gaze. Something almost human. Cole felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't explain, and before he realized it, the rifle on his shoulder slipped from its place and fell into the dust with a soft thump. A couple of people nearby turned to look. One of them let out a small laugh, not mocking, just surprised, but Cole didn't even notice. His eyes were fixed on the mare as if the rest of the world had gone silent. He didn't move to pick up the rifle. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, drawn in by something he didn't understand. The seller of the mare, an older man with kind eyes, stepped forward and watched Cole's reaction with a gentle smile. He had been around animals his whole life and understood when a bond formed instantly between a human and a creature. "She's special, isn't she?" the seller said calmly. Cole blinked, almost waking from a deep thought. He looked at the man, then back at the mare. "She caught my attention," Cole admitted slowly. He was not someone who shared his thoughts easily, but something about that moment made honesty feel natural. "She has that effect," the seller replied, patting the mare's neck. "Quiet, soft-tempered, listens better than most. She responds well to gentle people." Cole almost laughed inside. Gentle people. He didn't see himself that way. He was firm, serious, and always guarded. But the mare seemed to disagree. She stepped even closer and lowered her head, as if inviting him to touch her. Cole hesitated. He wasn't one to make quick decisions, especially not emotional ones, but his hand moved on its own, reaching toward her. When his fingers touched her warm forehead, something warm traveled up his arm and settled in his chest. It was peaceful. It was grounding. It was the kind of feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The mare's eyes closed as if she trusted him immediately. Cole exhaled slowly. He didn't know why, but he felt connected to her in a way that surprised him. He didn't understand why she reacted to him like that, or why he felt drawn to her, but the moment felt honest and real. The seller watched silently, letting the moment take place. After a few seconds, he said gently, "She's looking for someone who understands her." Cole didn't answer. His mind was full of questions, memories, and thoughts he couldn't organize. He wasn't planning to buy a horse today. He didn't come here searching for companionship. He came to get supplies and leave quietly, like always. But now, that plan felt different. He felt the dust under his boots, the cool wind brushing against his neck, and the quiet warmth of the mare before him. The marketplace noises faded into the distance. It was just him and her, standing in a moment that somehow felt important. Cole slowly pulled his hand away, but the mare nudged him gently, as if saying she wasn't ready to break the connection. He almost smiled. "I don't even know her name," Cole said softly. The seller chuckled. "I call her Whisper. She never makes noise unless she feels comfortable. And she rarely reacts to strangers." Whisper. The name fit her perfectly. Cole looked into Whisper's calm eyes again. It felt strange how a single moment could turn his entire day around. He tried to reason with himself. He had responsibilities. He had limited savings. He didn't like sudden changes, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that Whisper was meant to cross his path. His rifle still lay in the dust, but neither he nor Whisper paid attention to it. It was as if the world had paused, only showing him one path to focus on. Whisper made another soft sound. Not loud, not demanding, just gentle. Almost like a whisper carried through the air. Cole's chest tightened slightly. He didn't believe in signs, but this moment felt different. He took a deep breath and stepped a little closer to her. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know why this gentle creature was affecting him so deeply. He only knew that something peaceful had settled inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time, and that feeling refused to let him walk away. Cole stood beside Whisper for a long moment, before he finally stepped back. His mind felt crowded with thoughts he had avoided for years. The soft sound she made, the quiet way she looked at him, it had shaken something inside him. As he bent down to pick up his rifle from the dust, he realized his hands were not steady. That surprised him. He was usually calm, even in difficult situations. But this moment was different. Whisper had touched a corner of his heart he rarely visited. He slung the rifle back over his shoulder and wiped the dust from the metal. Then he looked at Whisper again. She seemed completely relaxed, as if she had known him for years instead of minutes. Cole felt a kind of warmth from her presence, something he wasn't used to feeling anymore. For most of his life, Cole had learned how to hide his emotions. He grew up in a quiet home on the edge of a wide field. His father was a hard-working man who woke before the sun and slept long after it disappeared. Cole admired him deeply. But when Cole was still young, life changed suddenly. A serious illness took his father's strength away, and Cole had to grow up before he was ready. Responsibilities that were meant for a grown man fell onto his young shoulders. While other boys spent their days laughing, playing, or exploring, Cole spent his time taking care of the animals, fixing broken fences, and making sure his home kept running smoothly. His mother worked as much as she could, but most of the physical tasks rested on Cole. He learned quickly, but those years took something from him, something soft and innocent. He became serious, quiet, and always alert. He had to be. After his father passed, Cole felt the world change once again. The house became too silent, the nights too long, and the days too heavy. People from the town helped when they could, but the real weight still sat on Cole's shoulders. He worked, he survived, but he never slowed down long enough to feel anything deeply. Over time, this became his nature. That was why Whisper's gentle behavior surprised him. He wasn't someone who trusted easily, not people and not animals. He believed trust required time, patience, and understanding, all things he rarely had room for in his life. Yet Whisper had looked at him with such quiet honesty that it felt like she already knew him, like she wasn't afraid of his silence or his seriousness. Cole shook his head slightly, trying to push old memories aside. But memories had a way of returning at unexpected times. As he stood in the marketplace, with the sound of distant chatter surrounding him. He remembered the many evenings when he sat alone outside his home, staring at the empty fields, wondering if life would ever feel full again. He remembered the days he spent working alone, the loneliness that clung to him like dust, and the feeling that he was always carrying more than he could hold. He didn't talk about these things, not to anyone, and over time, he convinced himself that he didn't need to. Being silent became easier than explaining. Work became easier than feeling. He built a life that looked simple on the outside but carried a quiet heaviness within. Even the rifle he carried had become a symbol of his life, not a tool for harm, but a reminder of protection and responsibility. He carried it because he had always needed to be prepared. Life had taught him to expect sudden challenges, and he learned not to rely on others to face them. The rifle reminded him to stay ready, stay responsible, and stay alone. But Whisper made him forget about all that, even if just for a moment. That gentle look in her eyes made him feel something he had buried long ago, a sense of connection, a sense of being seen, a sense of calm. The seller stepped closer. "You all right, son?" he asked softly. Cole nodded. "She has that effect," the seller replied with a small smile. "Makes folks remember things they didn't plan to." Cole didn't answer, but he knew the man was right. Whisper reminded him of times when he believed life could be gentle. She reminded him of the boy he used to be, before responsibility shaped him into a quiet, distant man. For the first time in many years, he felt a small crack in the walls he built around himself. He looked around the marketplace. Children were laughing near a fruit stall. Women were bargaining politely with sellers. Men were loading supplies into their wagons. It was a simple scene, full of ordinary life. The kind of life Cole rarely felt part of, but Whisper's soft presence made the world feel less distant, less overwhelming. Cole took a slow breath. He wasn't ready for something new in his life. He never planned for it. But he also couldn't ignore the small hope forming inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. The hope that maybe he didn't have to keep living with a quiet, empty heart. The seller continued. "She's a loyal horse, but she chooses her people carefully. She doesn't warm up to everyone." Cole looked at Whisper again. She blinked softly, her breathing slow and gentle. It was almost as if she was waiting for his decision. "I didn't plan on buying a horse today," Cole said quietly. "Sometimes life brings us what we need, not what we plan," the seller replied. Cole felt those words settle deep inside him. He had spent so long planning, preparing, surviving, that he had forgotten the feeling of receiving something unexpected and good. Whisper shifted her weight and took a small step toward him, her head lowering once more, inviting him closer. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. He reached out again, touching her lightly between the eyes. Whisper leaned into his hand, trusting him completely. He was quiet for a long moment, lost in thought. He remembered the lonely nights, the endless work, the silence of his home, the weight he carried since he was a boy. And now here stood Whisper, offering him a simple connection he didn't know he needed. He wondered why she had reacted to him this way. Was it his calm nature? His quiet presence? Or something else, something she sensed beyond words? Whatever it was, Cole couldn't deny it. He felt a bond forming, soft and steady, growing stronger with each second he spent near her. For a man who had spent most of his life avoiding attachments, this moment felt strangely natural. Cole finally stepped back and looked at the seller. He didn't know what decision he would make yet, but he knew one thing clearly. Whisper had already changed something inside him. He had walked into the marketplace planning to buy simple supplies and leave with the same quiet loneliness he always carried. But for the first time in years, he felt something different, a spark of warmth, a softened heart, a sense of possibility. And it all started with a soft whisper from a chestnut mare. Cole stood quietly beside Whisper, feeling her warm breath on his hand. The marketplace around him kept moving, children calling out to their parents, sellers arranging their goods, and customers exchanging soft conversations. But somehow, all those sounds felt distant. Whisper's presence was gentle, yet strong, almost as if she carried a message he wasn't fully ready to hear. Still, the calmness she brought was enough to hold him there, standing beside her, without any rush to walk away. The seller watched the two of them with a thoughtful expression. He had sold many horses in his life, but he had learned to recognize the rare moments when a horse chose a person before the person even made a decision. Whisper was doing that now, and the seller didn't want to interfere. He allowed the silence to continue until Cole finally spoke. "How long have you had her?" Cole asked softly, keeping his hand near Whisper's neck. 3 years, the seller replied. "She came to me young. Someone found her wandering near the edge of the valley. She was shy at first, but smart. She learns fast and understands the person standing beside her." Cole nodded, listening carefully. "She seems calm." "She is," the seller said. "But she also knows when someone is gentle enough to be trusted. That's why she reacts differently to some folks." Cole didn't say anything. Whisper nudged him again, softly pressing her nose against his arm, as if she wanted him to stay with her a little longer. He smiled faintly, feeling something inside him loosen. Whisper's touch was reassuring, almost like she was reminding him that not everything in life had to be heavy or difficult. The seller stepped a little closer. "You like her, don't you?" he asked with a quiet smile. Cole didn't answer immediately. Talking about feelings was never his comfort, but his silence was enough of an answer. The seller waited patiently. "I didn't come here planning to buy a horse," Cole finally said. His voice was low, almost thoughtful. "Most people don't plan for the important things," the seller replied. "They just happen." "Most people don't plan for the important 3. Cole looked at him, then looked back at Whisper. "I don't know if I can afford her," he admitted, not in a defeated way but in a realistic tone. Cole always lived carefully, never buying more than he needed. Every coin he earned had a purpose. The seller folded his arms gently. "I know you," he said. "You're honest, hardworking. I've seen you around for years. I'm not here to make things hard for you." Cole felt a small weight lift from his chest. "Still," he murmured, "I need to know the price." The seller named a fair amount, not too high and not too low. It was a reasonable price for a trained, calm mare like Whisper. Cole did the calculation quietly in his head. He had enough, but it would mean spending most of his savings. Buying Whisper would push him into a tighter budget for a while. Cole's eyes stayed on Whisper. She was still, peaceful, almost as if she sensed his hesitation. Her gentle movements were not demanding. They were simply patient. She didn't urge him to choose her, she just waited, trusting him to make his own decision. The seller spoke again. "Listen, son. I don't want her to go to someone who only sees her as an animal for work. She needs a person who understands her gentle nature. Someone who will treat her like a companion. When she looks at you, I see something different." Cole's heart tightened at those words. Though he didn't show it. He knew what loneliness felt like. He knew the weight of silence, the heaviness of carrying everything alone. Whisper didn't look at him the way people sometimes did, with curiosity or quick judgment. She looked at him like she recognized something inside him, something familiar. Cole turned his face slightly, letting the wind brush against his cheek as he thought. He wished he could explain his thoughts clearly. He wished he could put into words why Whisper mattered to him already. But all he managed to say was, "She reminds me of something peaceful." "That's because she carries peace with her," the seller said. "Some creatures do. They bring calm to people who need it." Cole pressed his lips together, thinking of all the evenings he spent alone at home. He remembered the way silence felt heavy in his small house. How the sound of wind outside sometimes became the only company. Whisper's presence felt like the opposite of that, the calm kind of silence. The kind that heals rather than hurts. "I don't want to make a decision just because of a feeling," Cole said, almost to himself. "I understand," the seller replied kindly, "but sometimes feelings lead us to the right place." Cole brushed Whisper's neck with his hand again. Her coat was warm under the fading sunlight. She leaned into his touch, surprising him with her trust. He felt a soft sense of responsibility growing inside him, not the heavy responsibility he carried for most of his life, but a gentle kind. The kind that comes from caring rather than duty. The seller sensed Cole's struggle and did something unexpected. He said, "Why don't you take a moment? Walk around with her. See how she feels beside you." Cole hesitated but agreed. "All right," he said quietly. The seller unhooked Whisper's lead rope and handed it to Cole. Whisper stepped forward calmly, her steps light and graceful. Cole walked slowly beside her, leading her through the quieter side of the marketplace. People stepped aside politely, watching Cole and Whisper move together with natural ease. Cole felt Whisper matching his pace, slowing when he slowed, turning when he turned. She didn't pull, didn't resist. She walked as if she understood him instantly. Cole wasn't used to anything in life being easy, yet this moment was. As he walked, he remembered something from his childhood, a time when he was very young, holding his father's hand as they walked through another market. His father had stopped in front of a horse and said, "Son, sometimes an animal chooses you before you choose it." Cole hadn't understood it back then, but he understood it now. He stopped walking and looked at Whisper. She looked back at him gently, her ears slightly forward. Her calm gaze seemed to ask him a quiet question. Cole felt something steady inside him, something that felt like a yes. He returned to the seller with Whisper beside him. The seller saw the answer in Cole's eyes before he even spoke. "I'll take her," Cole said softly. The seller's smile was warm and sincere. "Good choice," he said. "She's yours now." Cole felt something shift inside him, something hopeful. As he counted his savings and gave the seller the agreed amount, he didn't feel regret. He felt relief, like he had done something right. The seller placed the rope gently in Cole's hands and stepped back. Whisper leaned her head toward Cole again, as if confirming that she chose him too. For the first time in years, Cole felt he was not leaving the marketplace alone. He was walking away with a companion, a gentle friend who understood him without words. Whisper's soft presence made the dusty path feel lighter, and with every step they took together, Cole felt a slow, warm change settling into his life. The journey back to Cole's ranch was quiet, but it didn't feel like the usual kind of quiet he was used to. This time, the silence felt comforting, almost warm. Whisper walked beside him with steady, gentle steps, matching his pace without needing any force or direction. Cole found himself looking at her every few minutes, partly to make sure she was all right, and partly because he still couldn't believe she was truly his. Her soft brown eyes, the way her ears moved when she listened, the calmness in her steps, all of it made him feel strangely peaceful. He reached the small wooden gate of his ranch just before sunset. The sky above was covered in soft colors, light orange, fading pink, and soft purple streaks stretching across the horizon. A gentle breeze moved past them, carrying the smell of earth and grass. Cole pushed the gate open and guided Whisper inside. For a moment, he stood still, watching how she reacted to her new home. Whisper lifted her head, her ears turning in different directions as she observed her surroundings. She did not look nervous. Instead, she seemed curious in a calm way. She moved slowly across the open yard, taking in the sounds of the distant fields and the soft rustling of the tall grass. Cole expected her to hesitate or lose interest, but she stayed close to him, circling around him once before stopping at his side. Cole let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It felt good to see her comfortable so soon. His ranch wasn't big. It was a simple place, a small house, a wooden barn, a fenced field, and open land stretching far beyond the horizon. The silence here had always been heavy for him. It often reminded him of the loneliness he carried. But seeing Whisper here, seeing her breathing, moving, observing made the silence feel less empty. He guided Whisper toward the barn, wanting to show her the place she'd be staying. The barn door creaked softly as he pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of hay, wood, and clean straw. Cole hadn't expected anyone special to be in his life, but he had always kept the barn in good shape. His father had taught him to care for everything he owned, even when life felt difficult. Whisper stepped inside and looked around. She seemed comfortable, as though she already felt safe here. Cole walked to a corner of the barn where he kept a few tools. and began preparing a clean space for her. He spread fresh straw, filled a bucket with clean water, and placed some hay nearby. Whisper watched him the whole time, her head slightly tilted. "You're watching me like you're checking if I'm doing everything right," Cole said softly, almost with a smile. Whisper blinked slowly, as if responding. He walked toward her and gently patted her neck. Whisper leaned into the touch, her warm coat soft under his hand. Cole didn't realize how much he missed this kind of connection. Until now. It had been years since he allowed himself to feel close to anything or anyone. Whisper made that distance disappear without trying. After settling her in, Cole stepped out of the barn and stood in the open yard for a moment. The cool afternoon air brushed against his skin, and he watched the sky grow darker. Something inside him felt lighter, as though he had put down a weight he had carried for too long. He went inside his house, washed up, and made a simple meal. While he ate, he kept glancing out the window toward the barn. It felt unusual to have someone or something waiting outside. Someone he was responsible for. Someone who trusted him. After finishing his meal, he stepped back outside to check on Whisper. She was standing quietly, her eyes half closed, resting peacefully. When she heard him approach, she lifted her head and walked toward him slowly. Cole stood still, letting her come to him. When she reached him, she gently pressed her nose against his shoulder. It wasn't a demanding gesture, it was more like a quiet sign of trust. Cole felt a warmth spread through his chest. "You settled in fast," he murmured. Whisper blinked softly, almost as if she understood. Over the next few days, Cole and Whisper began developing a quiet routine that brought comfort into Cole's life. Each morning before sunrise, Cole would step outside, stretch his stiff shoulders, and find Whisper already awake, waiting patiently. She would lift her head and make a soft sound the moment she saw him. He would smile, something he rarely did before, and walk toward her. He brushed her coat, cleaned her space, and led her to the field where the morning dew covered the grass like tiny diamonds. Whisper would walk beside him with steady steps, never pulling, never rushing. There was a harmony in the way they moved together, a rhythm that formed naturally. Cole started taking her for gentle rides across the land. At first, he rode slowly, testing her comfort. Whisper responded with calm acceptance, moving smoothly across the soft soil. She obeyed every gentle direction he gave, not because she was trained to obey, but because she trusted him. Cole hadn't ridden for enjoyment in many years. He rode only when work forced him. Riding had become just another responsibility. But with Whisper, riding felt different. It felt freeing. It felt peaceful. Sometimes, while riding across the open field, Cole felt like the heavy silence he once lived with was being carried away by the wind. Whisper helped him remember that life didn't always need to be hard. It could be simple. It could be gentle. Neighbors began noticing the change in him. Before Whisper, Cole spoke very little. He came into town only when he needed supplies, stayed quiet, and left without much conversation. But after Whisper came into his life, people saw him smiling more often, greeting others with a soft nod, and carrying a lighter expression. One day, an elderly neighbor stopped Cole near the fence. "This horse has brightened you up, son," she said kindly. "You look more at ease these days." Cole didn't deny it. "She's a gentle one," he replied quietly. "She must be," the neighbor said. "You look like a man who finally found a bit of peace." Cole thought about that. Peace was something he hadn't felt in years. But Whisper brought a quiet peace into his days. A steady one that didn't disappear when work became hard, or when the nights grew long. In the evenings, Cole would sit outside his house with Whisper standing nearby. He sometimes talked to her not deeply, but in a soft, simple way. Whisper didn't need words to understand him. She listened with her calm eyes, her head slightly lowered, as if she absorbed every quiet emotion he shared. Sometimes, Cole would rest his hand on Whisper's back and just breathe. Whisper would stay still, patient, offering silent comfort. He didn't realize how much he needed that calm support until it became part of his daily life. Whisper also changed the way the ranch felt. Before, the place felt empty. Now, it carried a warm presence. Cole found himself cleaning the barn more, repairing little things around the ranch, planting small patches of flowers near the front gate. Whisper inspired him to care more, not just for her, but for himself and his home. One evening, after a long day of work, Cole walked Whisper to the open field. The sky was golden, and the air was cool. Whisper walked close to him, her steps slow and relaxed. Cole didn't say anything, but he felt something deep and steady within him, a sense of belonging, something he didn't know he needed. He stood beside Whisper, watching the sunset spread warm colors across the sky. Whisper lowered her head, brushing it gently against his arm. Cole closed his eyes for a moment, feeling a calmness he hadn't experienced in years. He realized then that Whisper wasn't just a horse he bought from the marketplace. She was his companion, his quiet friend, the gentle presence that healed the empty silence inside him. She didn't speak words, but she brought him a comfort that words could never express. And in her soft, steady presence, Cole finally felt that he was no longer walking through life alone. The morning sun slowly rose over the wide land, as if it was waking up after a long and heavy night. The golden light spread softly across the quiet town, touching the rooftops, the small shops, the dusty roads, and finally the open fields where the cowboy stood. He breathed in the fresh air like he was breathing for the first time after years of holding his breath. Something inside him felt new. Something inside him felt strong, and something inside him felt calm. As if after walking through storms and shadows, he had finally reached a place that made sense. He looked at the horse beside him, the beautiful animal that had changed the direction of his life. When he had first seen her, she seemed like a simple creature who needed help. Now he understood she had guided him as much as he had protected her. She had led him toward kindness when he had been surrounded by danger. She had led him toward courage when he felt lost. She had led him toward trust when his heart did not know how to trust anymore. But most of all, she had led him to the people he had met, people who had shown him light in places he had only seen darkness. The cowboy walked slowly toward the stable, his boots making soft sounds on the wooden floor. Inside, the girl from the ranch was already waiting. She stood beside the horse, brushing her coat gently like she was taking care of something precious. Her face held a quiet smile. Not loud or demanding, but peaceful and full of understanding. The cowboy paused at the entrance for a moment, watching the girl and the horse together. He realized he had seen many things in his life: danger, fear, loneliness. But this simple scene touched him more deeply than all the loud memories of his past. It was calm, warm, and full of small kindness. Maybe that was what he had wanted his whole life without knowing it. As he stepped inside, the girl looked up and greeted him with a gentle voice. "She's calmer today. I think she knows she's safe." He nodded, stepping closer, resting a hand on the horse's neck. "She's been strong. Stronger than most of us, I think." The girl smiled again, her eyes softening. "Maybe that's why she chose you." The cowboy felt something move in his chest. He had always lived believing life pushed him into places he had no choice in. But now, hearing her words, he wondered if some moments in life were not accidents. Maybe some moments were meant to bring the right people together. They walked the horse out into the open field. The sunlight made her coat shine like a polished stone. The wind brushed against her mane, making it flow softly. She walked slowly at first, testing the ground, testing her strength. But then, she lifted her head higher, and her steps grew steadier. She was healing, step by step. The cowboy couldn't help but smile. Seeing her grow stronger filled him with a quiet pride. It wasn't the pride of winning something big or proving something loud. It was the kind of pride that came from doing something good, something gentle, something that helped another life breathe easier. The girl walked beside him, her steps matching his. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them felt full, not empty. It felt like they understood each other, without needing too many words. After walking for a while, they reached the edge of the ranch, where the fields met the horizon. The cowboy stopped and looked out. thinking about everything that had happened. The danger he had run from. The hunters who had chased him. The people who had tried to take what wasn't theirs. For so long, he had thought running was the only thing he could do to survive. But now, with the calm wind touching his face, he began to understand something new. Life wasn't only about escaping. It was also about choosing where to stay. He turned to the girl, unsure how to say what he felt. His voice had always been strong when he faced trouble, but softer moments made him uncertain. Yet he tried anyway. "You've helped more than you know," he said quietly. The girl looked at him with steady eyes. "You did the same. Maybe we helped each other." The simplicity of her words touched him deeply. It was true. They had helped each other. Both had been carrying weight in their hearts. And meeting changed something in both of them. They walked back toward the ranch house. And the cowboy felt a slow warmth in his chest as he saw the older ranch owner standing outside, waving gently. The old man had taken him in, without asking too many questions. He had offered safety, food, and trust. The cowboy owed him more than he could say. When they reached the porch, the old man smiled. "You two make a good team," he said lightly. The girl laughed softly, and the cowboy felt his ears warm, though he tried not to show it. The old man placed a hand on the cowboy's shoulder. "There's work here, if you want it. Not the kind that puts your life in danger. Just honest work. A place to stay. A chance to build something new." Those simple words hit harder than any loud offer he had received in his life. The cowboy had never looked for a home. He never believed he deserved one. But now, looking at the ranch, the girl, the horse, and the peaceful land stretching far, he felt something he rarely felt: hope. "I'll stay," he said quietly. "For a while at least." The old man nodded, as if he already knew the cowboy would say yes. The days that followed were filled with simple routines. The cowboy worked with the horses, repaired fences, helped with the crops, and learned the rhythm of a peaceful life. Every morning, he saw the horse he had saved, growing stronger. Every afternoon, he shared small moments with the girl, from brushing the horses to carrying hay, to talking about little things like weather, food, or old stories of the town. The more time he spent with her, the more he realized she had a calm strength he admired. She didn't try to change him. She didn't ask questions he wasn't ready to answer. She simply made space for him to breathe, to grow, to feel human again. One evening, when the sky turned orange and purple, he found himself walking toward the field where she stood with the horse. The wind was gentle, the world quiet, and the colors around them looked like a painting. The cowboy walked up to her and stood beside her without speaking. After a moment, she turned slightly toward him. "You look different," she said softly. "Lighter." He smiled a little. "I feel different." They stood together, watching the horizon as the horse grazed peacefully near them. The moment felt simple, and yet it felt big, like something in both of their hearts had finally found a place to rest. As the first stars appeared in the sky, the cowboy looked at the girl, then at the horse, then at the land around him. This place, these people, they had become part of his story in a way he never expected. He had once lived with danger behind him and uncertainty in front of him. Now he stood in a place where kindness had replaced fear, trust had replaced doubt, and peace had replaced the noise of his past. Maybe this was what it meant to find something worth holding on to. Maybe this was what it meant to choose a life instead of running from it. And so, under the soft glow of the evening sky, the cowboy felt a truth settle quietly inside him. The moment he dropped his rifle in the dust was not the moment he lost something. It was the moment he found everything he truly needed.